Thanks for tuning in. I'm Andy Shulman. This is the Generation Report. Back when I started this podcast, I was pretty well convinced that generational change was in some way or another the explanation for most of what was happening in America. But over time, I've come to believe that ideas have an almost unmatched power to affect change for good or for ill. One person who has a remarkable intuitive understanding of that power is the person you'll hear in this episode. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation. Lily Tang Williams.
Hi, Andy. How are you? Doing great. A beautiful day here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, getting snow and ice all over New England. It's really great to have the chance to chat with you today because for those who don't know, I was a supporter of Lily's during her campaign for Congress last year, which got quite a bit of attention near the end of the race for sure, but really glad we have a chance to chat for the podcast. Many people are already familiar with your personal background and with your views of sort of the general state of what's happening in America today. But for those who may not know, you came to this country in 1988 from communist China. It was a winding journey to even get here in the first place. What are the most important things people should know about why you decided to come here and why you decided to throw your hat into political affairs later on?
Well, thank you for volunteer for my campaign, Andy. I appreciate all the grassroots support and all the young volunteers and like your generation got involved. And to summarize my life in China for 24 years, basically I was born like 2 years before Mao's Cultural Revolution. I was totally brainwashed, and I worshipped him like a god because that's how we were indoctrinated in government schools. I never asked, challenged anything. And even though we were very poor, live on food rationing, community housing, where 8 families share 1 bathroom, I never challenged anything. I was very good, Mao's little slave, basically. And people don't know communism, but once you really lived under it, and then you wake up one day, you just could not believe, that, how did I just believe everything they told us? Because I was a child, and when I first time asked questions is when he died, when I was 12. And it's like, he is a human being. He died. He's mortal. So I wanted to study law in the best college in China and to search for truth. And that led me to go to Shanghai at the age of 17 and trying to look for the truth. And I was very, very patriotic too. I said, maybe we can transform China into a rule of law society instead of a rule of man. And that ambition got also totally destroyed in college when I realized, one party dictatorship of CCP will not change. They do not want a rule of law because they told us law school students and that the law is a tool for the party to govern the masses. So I become a very rebellious teenager, and I did not know what to look for. I was just skipping classes and going to parties. And I met a foreign student who told me about the Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. He put America in my head. By the time I become faculty member after college, and I feel like I really could not be happy in China. So I wanted to come to the United States and to be free. The only way I could come is by being a graduate student. So after 2 or 3 years efforts and carefully manage my escape, because I had to get a permission from my Communist Party boss in law school to allow me to leave and to quit my job to get a passport. And I had to find an American sponsor to sponsor me for a foreign student. So I came here 2 months before my 24th birthday, 1988, May 11th. And I had a big smile on my face. I did not have much, $100 borrowed, and could not speak English. But I thought, this is land of free. I'm going to make it. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to get education. And so that was almost 37 years ago.
Great. So one of the things that, as I've developed or tried to develop a very basic understanding of what went on in China when you were young is the differentiation in the Cultural Revolution between the black and the red classes, as well as the emergence of the Red Guards, who were principally comprised of not just young people, but high school students. Would you elaborate on some of the parallels that you've seen in the last 10, 12, 15 years in America to what you saw during the Cultural Revolution in those respects?
I have been actually sharing my stories for past 10 years. After I come to the United States, I wasn't political for first 20 years. So I was learning English, and learning about my new country, got married, raised children, start my own business because I was laid off and by a corporation 2000. So I had to actually deprogram myself with my husband's help to know the real history about China. What Mao did, and what happened during his mass famine. And I mean, it's like I did not know the truth because the CCP controlled all the press and media and the schools and massive kind of brainwashing the kids from basically first grade all the way to graduated from college. We did not know the truth. People were dying for truth. So I wasn't political. But I also had to learn the truth about China. So I got activated in politics accidentally after I become U.S. citizen because of Obama push for Common Core centralized education. And I was mom with 3 young children, and I care about their education, the quality of their education. So I was fighting against that, and I put all my kids into a local charter school where I serve as a board member, later a chair to exercise the parental control. I thought that was great. At least I had that parental rights and to choose a charter school, even though it was still public funded, because I got laid off and I started my own business. I was not profitable for years. I had the time, but I did not have money to put my kids into private school. And I, couldn't homeschool because I thought that my English just wasn't even good enough. So I got involved like 20 years later because of education issue. Then the more I learned about what's going on, in schools, and I feel like they were trying to not just centralize education standard and data collection, but also trying to rewrite history to indoctrinate American youth and to promote government as a big solution and equity, socialism is wonderful. We need the free stuff. It's all the same thing I heard in China, growing up in a communist country. So they were repackaging communism to brainwash our youth. Just like Mao said, youth is most, like beautiful. Their mind is a beautiful piece of a blank sheets of paper. You can draw most beautiful picture on it. And that means whoever controls the youth's mind and controls country's future. So I got really scared. I got more and more activated, not just work on educational issue, but also against gun control, against invasion of privacy by the government and censorship. And so I think that for the past now almost 12 years, I exercised my, citizen duty. I think I have a duty as a new American citizen to tell my stories, to point out similarities and say, our country is going down wrong direction. I don't want that happen here. I want my kids to live in a constitutional republic and a democratic government system where I came here for. And, running for office is just one of the, platform I use to get my messages out and to hopefully to resonate with Americans, because lots of them just don't know the similarities. I know because I lived it. I suffered it for 24 years. So I feel like I'm just answering my calling to do what is right for our country, for my children.
The rise of the woke movement, which I think most people would say first began to emerge around 2011 or so in a small way, and then it really exploded, especially on college campuses around 2014. It caught a lot of people by surprise, but the one thing I'm becoming more and more aware of is that the COVID shutdowns of 2020 and 2021 was maybe when the dam burst, because when a lot of parents started looking at the materials that were being given to kids during the lockdown away from direct contact person to person with the teachers, people across the country were just like, are you kidding? So I guess my question to you is, do you think that that was a turning point where the people trying to push these ideas through education can no longer hide that this is the way they see the world and this is the mindset that they want to indoctrinate, essentially?
Yes, I know. I was in New Hampshire, and some parents were business owners, and they trust the school to educate their kids until COVID lockdowns. Kids come home and learning on computers at home, and they discovered, what are you learning in school? That time was all about critical race theory. White people were born racist. And this dad is actually very busy managing his own business and living actually in my district. So he started to come out actively against critical race theory. That was like 2021 when I met him. And you cannot believe what happened to him and his family. They lost all their friends, and his kids could not even get into other schools. They had to move away. It's so sad. So this cultural Marxist critical race theory, and I call that really a cultural Marxism. And also lots of, I live in a state 90% white people, and they're pushing for this stuff onto everybody. But I notice the change of culture under Obama. It's like it has been going on for, like you said, for over 10 years now. And it just the George Floyd event just really pushed that to the peak, and coupled with COVID lockdowns and the vaccine mandate, mask mandate, kids were stuck at home, and the business got shut down. Andy, I was having PTSD, like for 6 weeks of riots, burning and looting, and burn down statues, and the chanting, and the identity politics. BLM Antifa writers like had no accountability, and the BLM founders came out to say, we are trained Marxist. I was very terrified to see that what happened in our American inner cities. And I really feel like sure looks familiar to me, like a cultural revolution I saw in China. So I started to get activated and co-founded the Aging American Coalition in New Hampshire, come out against critical race theory. And I get the Chinese immigrants and to come to my YouTube channel. We call out this American cultural revolution to say, stop it. We have lived this before. And we were very scared. We're talking about the same things, including my friend, Xi Van Fli, got activated during that time. But I think lots of parents start to wake up to say what's going on in our schools. The communist ideologies always start in schools. You have to control their mind. You have to feed them something that by the time they graduate from high school, they're social justice warriors, and they believe in war culture, cancel culture, and they will even turn their parents under the bus to against their parents. Exactly what happened under Mao, and they would go to college and continue to learn about Marxism. And then by the time they graduate, they vote, they think, they look like a Karl Marx. You say teachers unions, you say the public library associations, they all turn to Marxist organizations. It's like, why are we funding them? Why are we doing that?
Well, the big question is, in a sense, is how did we get here? How did America get to this point where political ideas connect to such completely disparate views of seeing the world? And what's the short and long-term implications for what kind of future we could have as a country? It's interesting having the perspective of being in my late 30s, like I am, because there's no question that when I was going through the education system in the 1990s and the 2000s, it was a monoculture. You were fed one worldview, and even if teachers didn't speak explicitly of their political views, you could glean them pretty easily. But I was thinking the other night because of the past that you've had interacting with David Hogg, that the school shooting that I remember very vividly when it happened was the Columbine high school shooting in 1999 in Littleton, Colorado. And it's a fascinating contrast to the school shooting that made David Hogg famous, the Parkland shooting, because when Columbine happened, it was so shocking. That whole sense that that was even possible was so new that the media did not really mobilize behind people who were at the school until well after the fact. There was a lot of blame being cast around about the National Rifle Association, about different musicians and cultural figures who had supposedly influenced the shooters. So there was political blame used, but there weren't necessarily young people used to hold up for a political cause. But when 2018 came around and the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened, it's amazing how fast they discovered who David Hogg was, put him on TV, fed him questions to try to get lawmakers to act and to, more importantly, put anybody who disagreed with their narrative on the defensive immediately. And I don't know if you would necessarily agree with this, but in a way, I think it's become something that's boomeranged on them because they've taken it to such an extreme that they've invited people on the other side to stand up for what they believe.
See, nothing is all of a sudden. I saw the progressive movement. I mean, as I said, started really since Obama become a president, and every crisis involved mass shooting. You see the left side jump on gun control. My first testimony in Colorado when Columbine actually happened, I was in Colorado. I was very worried, and but when I first testified as American citizen in Colorado state government in Denver, it was against all the leftist gun control bills. They voted along the party line anyway. Colorado is one party control basically by Democrats, and they always wanted to have gun control. They always blame and law-abiding citizens. Just think more laws will work better to prevent mass shootings, but they never have a comprehensive conversations about other issues, cultural, moral decline, breakup of families, mental health issues, single family households, fatherless homes, no father role models, and welfare state to incentivize generational poverty, and the mental health hospitals, institutions were closed down decades ago. But they don't want to discuss that. It's like they want to push just one direction, more gun control bill. They think it's going to solve the problem. But you have seen that it does not solve the problem. The strictest gun control place in blue cities, blue states, have mass shootings and lots of people dies, and they don't talk about those. But they want to always come after the Second Amendment right. So I think for me, I saw that like 2013. It's like 12 years ago. And why do our kids believe that kind of narratives? Government schools, I don't even call that public school anymore. And when you see also that communist youth groups are actively recruiting young people, especially you saw last 4 years under Biden, they're very active on college campuses to recruit communists. So I think there is this push, like the former KGB from former Soviet Union, Yuri Masmov said there are 4 stages of ideological subversion, right? And then during the last 4 years, I feel like we were in the stage 3, which is a crisis and crisis and crisis. Are they trying to just normalize, what happened in the past 4 years? Illegals flood into our country, committed crimes, and the American citizens were put last, and the censorship, no free speech. America is going to lead a great awakening, and it is happening now. I'm happy to see that. It is beginning though. We have lots of work to do.
So your diagnosis would basically be that in the 4 stages of subversion or indoctrination, we had gotten into stage 3, perhaps approaching stage 4, but the country has pulled back. Is that how you would see it, or
Yes, got to
would you
interrupt you,
characterize it
right?
differently?
Because
Yeah.
Trump won the White House. I still don't understand. You don't have to, vote for him, but what's wrong with his supporters who believe in America first? If you are a politician elected by people, you like to see our money all sent to overseas. You want to see our money sent to illegals. Our veterans need lots of help. Our regular working middle class families and the senior citizens need lots of help. So why they would believe Biden's rhetoric, like the MAGA people, Republicans, are the threat to their democracy? Our democracy, last November, people voted for this. And Doge Department is exposing the government waste, fraud, and politicians' corruption. It's like you have problem with taxpayers' money being exposed to help corrupted politicians, NGOs, and go to foreign countries in the name of foreign aid. But really, those money is a slush fund for their cause, promoting anti-American agenda overseas. It's contradictory to its mission, its cause. I think people in this country, especially youth, need to do independent research. That's why I don't like repeat talking points. And that's why I called out my opponent last year. It's like, she just seems like groomed to repeat the party talking points, and but not really have a genuine concern for the regular American citizens. This party is taken over by radical leftists. If they can elect David Hogg as the vice chair, and talking about DEI publicly at their DNC meetings, can you imagine they control the whole country?
Yeah.
It's insane. They are the radical Marxists. Not okay. We're not okay with that as American citizens.
One of the many, many people who I have become whose work I've become acquainted with as I've been producing this podcast, I know that what this person said would really resonate with you. His name was Angelo Codevilla, Codevilla. He emigrated to the United States from Italy in the 1950s when he was a boy, but he spent the last, I want to say 10 or 12 years of his life doing a lot of writing and research about what he called the American ruling class. His contention was basically that something happened in America after World War II that really crystallized a class of people that was, and I'm using his words now, self-contained, self-reverential, and embodied their disdain toward the rest of the population in government. And of course, it was hard to be a disinterested observer, but to see your opponent and to hear the things that she was saying, and to then look into her biography and say, oh, wow, she went to school here. Oh, she knows this person. It was almost as though Angelo Codevilla could have written her as a character in a book. She was right out of central casting for somebody who is born and bred in elite circles and who I'm sure worked very hard, but was nonetheless somebody who was tapped on the shoulder and somebody said, you're gonna run for office and we want to see you go far because you speak well for us.
When we think about America, it's a shining city on the hill and for individual rights and liberty, and it stands for freedom in the world. And then they come here to say, oh, how come that the political ruling elite class want to push their agenda on us? And the media they use, funded by the taxpayers' money, are repeating same kind of talking points and who want to shut down people who disagree with them. But they then call another side, Nazis, not just in the US. They are in the whole world, political ruling class in bed with the globalists and the billionaires. They're all anti-freedom, anti-America. Our rights come from God, our creator, not from government, not from those global elitist ruling class people. If we are well-informed citizens and united together to defend our country, there's nothing we cannot win with. When you have a cultural revolution started like this and run by global elites, you will lose your cultural heritage and your families and your private properties and your quality of life and your freedom to choose, basically. But I hope European people, just like American people, wake up and to exercise, their voice now before it's too late.
So would your assessment of the state of liberty in America today, if you were to give it on a grading scale, would you say it's very good and improving, but still facing a lot of at least potential blowback? Or how do you assess the overall state of where the liberty movement is heading right now?
Well, I mean, liberty movement basically now kind of joined or combined with a MAGA movement that was demonized. We were very close to lose our country. If Democrats control the country, legalize all the illegal migrants and give them voting rights at the federal level, Elon Musk was right. We'll be done. So I will not be so optimistic. I am optimistic now, but do not underestimate the decades of infiltration, psychological, cultural war, and weaponize our kids. How about the judicial activist judges? How about the George Soros money interfere with lots of local elections? I don't know. I think we also have to do our own part. We cannot just rely on President Trump alone and his cabinet members. We cannot just rely on Elon Musk and Doge. What can you do at a local level? Remember that founding father said, I gave you a constitution or give you a republic if you can keep it. So I always tell people a story about being a landlord. I know if your property are destroyed by your tenants, by your property management who don't do their jobs, whose fault is that? It's you as landlord. If you consider yourself as the owners of this country, then you need to become well-informed citizens. There's so much that the individuals can do.
Part of what has been making the news outside of the Doge front, which I know has been very dominant, have been some of the tariff initiatives put forward by the Trump administration, one of which concerns China. It would be very hard to find anybody more personally invested or knowledgeable in this country about what China is doing and what U.S. Chinese relations what form they might take in the next 4 years with the new administration. So, what are your thoughts about how the new administration is dealing with China right now?
I think that people got to understand the real colors of the Chinese Communist Party and the Chairman Xi. Lots of Americans don't understand there is a China Dream agenda by Xi Jinping CCP to become number one dominant power in the world militarily, technologically, economically, and diplomatically. They started a long time ago, use a Belt and Road Initiative to expand into so many foreign countries in order to set up foreign debt trap and to buy influence and even to expand their military presence. And I don't know if President Trump knows about Xi Jinping's China Dream. And I just saw recently that they had a Army Academy school in Panama. Besides the Panama, had a contract with a Hong Kong company, which is part of China now, to run the canal. But they also had so many PLA Army people in Panama, Argentina, Brazil. When I went to South Africa 2018, you get out of Johannesburg airport, the big banner was People's Bank of China. They have expanded into lots and lots of countries as the part of agenda to achieve a China Dream. Can you imagine if we can bring down the CCP, communism in China, then North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, they will be severely weakened because China is their big brother. And also they have unlimited friendship with Russia. So there's so much we can do when it comes to really reform our policies on China. And China is the number one threat to the United States. Do we want to be ruled by China by 2049? That's their China dream goal, by the communist, fascists who do not value human rights and human freedom? Or you want us to really have effective China policy now? They are not stick to their promise to the World Trade Organizations. They're not opening up their market, and they're stealing intellectual property. It's a one-way street. Knowing the true colors of communists, have effective policies to deal with them, engage them, but don't trust them and decouple from them. If they don't stick to the World Trade Organization terms, then they need to be put on probation status. If they do not open up their market, then why should we open our market to them?
It's so interesting because when I was growing up, there was an idea, it was a phrase actually coined by a Japanese American political scientist named Francis Fukuyama. And the phrase was the end of history. And basically, the idea behind it was that essentially the world was moving toward liberal democratic governments, and that it was going to create a world where markets ruled everything. And that essentially America was going to sit atop of it as long as we had this preeminent position. Well, one thing that was interesting about that was that got carried over into a lot of boredom about how meaningful is politics going to be for the foreseeable future as long as the whole world is moving toward governments that resemble ours. That was the thinking at the time. And as I think the 9/11 attacks, everything that came with the wars on terror after that, the global financial crisis, the woke movements, everything we've been talking about here proves conclusively there's never, at least not for very long, there's never a stasis in the world situation where people can just relax and think that for the next 5 years or 10 years of the rest of their natural life, things are just going to be free and easy and people are going to be making more and more money. I think that attitude was very pervasive when I was growing up. Again, there was this term that was used to kind of describe it, and we have long moved past that now. It's a time of high urgency. And the thing that's encouraging to me is more and more people are starting to see it. More and more people are realizing these elite circles came to believe they would shape the world in the future entirely to their liking without being opposed. But they were wrong.
Don't become complacent just because, we had a big election victory, but don't be complacent because the enemies of freedom never rest. They never disappear. They will reorganize. They will regroup. So you cannot take our victories and any our freedoms for granted. And our schools don't teach their history. What are we going to do about that after we shut down Department of Education? And I just saw the news today. My friend in Oklahoma has a bill to teach the atrocities of communism in Oklahoma. The bill did not pass. And in New Hampshire, we had a bill to say, hey, you cannot teach divisive concept, DEI, critical race theory. The one group is more superior than the other group. It was passed, signed into law, but because of lawsuit, that got reversed. So they will never rest, and we should not either. There are certain things that when foreign government come here to do it, we will identify them, register them as foreign agents. But there are certain exemptions: education, commerce, and entertainment. So when you Google, when you search, I want some Chinese language program on TV, guess what shows up on Xfinity and cable companies? It's 3 pro CCP, pro China Chinese language TV programs, and limit Chinese companies' ability, and from also other adversary countries, to come here, New Hampshire, by land within 10 miles of our sensitive national security military sites. 10 miles. So we already have a Trojan horse coming to our country. It's not just 10 miles that limit their ability to spy on you and become a national security threat. But that's first step. So I think we have lots of work to do, Andy.
Yeah. Is there, besides some of the initiatives and policies and programs we've discussed, is there one particular area that you're interested to see if the new administration in Washington succeeds in doing, or the new governor in New Hampshire for that matter? Is there an item for each that you're watching particularly closely?
Well, that I follow closely about what the Doge is doing because our country is $37 trillion in debt and continue borrowing and printing money, drive up inflation. And then we wasted so much money on those anti-American causes. And through NGOs, through media, there's so much dirt we probably don't know yet. We got to follow the money. We got to audit the government. We need to have a clean, transparent government. And we need to have truthful, objective, independent media. Those two things, if we can accomplish this first year, I think then the more and more people will be aware, what happened to our money. And at the meantime, I want to offer my service. If any place, any state government, any universities and schools and the government agencies need my expertise about China, I'm hoping that I can be of service to our state and to our country in one way or another.
That would be great. We'll obviously be following that closely. As we begin to wind down, I want to just relay something that I hope won't resonate as a political point, but I suppose it might, which is that I took a trip for 2 weeks last spring through the Midwest and the South before kind of working my way back to the Northeast. And especially having lived in Washington, D.C. in the past, I was absolutely shocked when I was leaving the city in my car, going over the Lincoln Bridge toward Arlington National Cemetery. You get on the George Washington Parkway to the Spout Run Parkway and head west along the Potomac River. That road, as I was driving it out of Washington, D.C., was in the worst shape of any road I think I've driven on in my entire life. And in light of everything we've learned about all of the money that's been sent overseas, it was such a telltale sign for me. And as I said, I lived in the DC area for 2.5 years. I was shocked by this. And one of the things that I hope, regardless of how you feel about the new administration or Trump personally or anybody else, I hope that most people would be offended if they took a trip down to Washington, D.C. right now, and the roads that move through that area past all these national monuments were in such bad shape as they were when I was there. That should never happen, and it should never happen again. And so I hope that everything we've been talking about, hopefully the government will be more accountable as waste, fraud gets curbed back, that starts to change. So we'll be looking forward to seeing your activity going forward. But any other plans for 2025 before we close up?
Well, people keep asking me, are you going to run again in 2nd District? So I want to take an advantage of this opportunity to tell people that I really appreciate all your support. I have lots of donors and lots of volunteers, and I'm a grassroots candidate. It was a very wild ride, but I'm not so sure what is ahead of me, and I can only promise I will stay in the ring and to fight for America. And I'm a patriot, and I love this country. There's no place to go without, I just cannot imagine where would I go if I lose America. I have no place to go home. And so I'm staying in the fight, but I just don't know in what capacity. And the 2nd District is tough. I don't know if we are doing redistricting or not. And also, congressional race always requires millions and millions of dollars. And I run for 2 years and 3 years now. It's like it's lots of work too. I mean, I had to take a 6 weeks vacation to visit my family, friends, and take care of business. It's like you didn't have life for a while, but it's worth it. I met lots of wonderful people. I'm really grateful, and thank you from bottom of my heart. And I'm living American dream, and my successful story in this country proved to the whole world that America is the greatest country on earth. Even the Chinese people saw my viral debate video translate into Chinese, and they are secretively, they cannot talk about it publicly, but they are secretively very proud of me, and wanted me to, continue my efforts. So I'm very encouraged, but regardless what, I'm gonna stay in the fight, and depends on, situation changes, and we will see what happens. And I'm open-minded to all the options at this point. And but thank you, Andy, and lots of volunteers like you. And we worked together for about a year. That was lots of fun and a very rewarding experience.
Well, it certainly was, and it's just been great to to get to know your story and get involved with so many people in New Hampshire and beyond who were really interested in your campaign and what it represented. And we obviously would have loved the most wonderful of results, but I think we're basically in agreement that the liberty movement in this country is moving in the right direction, and we hope for continued good news on a variety of fronts so that we can have the country we want, as your story is certainly a testament to. So I thank you so much for joining me today, and we look forward to following you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
Lily.